In this video, we're going to look at diabetes and also cancer metabolism. Now, diabetes is the third leading cause of death in the United States after heart disease and cancer. And diabetes is caused by your body either not producing insulin or can't recognize that insulin is being produced. And so you'll have a buildup of glucose in your blood that will spill or be excreted in your urine. Your cells will start to die off because they can't get glucose. Your body will go through ketosis because your body will say, well, we don't have glucose, we don't have energy, start breaking down the fatty acids, go through fatty acid oxidation, gluconeogenesis to release the glucose, and also ketone body formation. All of these will be sped up. And this high concentration of ketone bodies can lead to acidosis. You have excess acid that will be excreted into your urine along with ammonia, sodium, potassium, phosphate, and water. And this can lead to dehydration because your body is building up all these toxins trying to get rid of it with urine, and every time you do that you lose water. So it's just a vicious cycle there. Also, as we talked about, for your ketone body, that can be made into acetone, and you'll breathe that out and you'll get that sweet smelling breath that is a sign of diabetes. Now, there are two types of diabetes out there: insulin dependent juvenile onset type 1 and non insulin dependent maturity onset type 2. Now, let's look at type 1. And in this type of diabetes, you really don't make insulin, or it's nearly absent because your pancreas lacks or has defective beta cells. And we talked about in a previous video how the beta cells of the pancreas can realize how much glucose there is and can release insulin due to the glucose levels. A lot of the times, this is due to your own body accidentally seeing that your beta cells are a foreign invader. The antibodies will stick to it, and you'll have an autoimmune response that will kill off your beta cells. And so this is manageable. You just need insulin injections and you need to eat a balanced diet. But individuals with type 1 diabetes usually have a lifespan that is reduced by 1/3 because there's a lot of complications. And also, there's not as good of control of metabolism when you're giving yourself shots. Your body can regulate the levels of insulin and glucagon very well as long as everything is working. But if you can't make insulin, it's more of an imperfect science at that point. So you can get things like kidney malfunction, nerve impairment, cardiovascular disease. One of the side effects of having high blood glucose is hyperglycemia. That's where you can get blindness through your retinal degeneration, and also glycosylation of lens proteins. So we talked about glycosylation in Biochem 1. Those are proteins that have sugars attached to them. So with a high blood glucose level, you can have accidental glycosylation. One way that type 1 could be fixed is pancreas beta cell transplants, because that's basically what's wrong with you. Your beta cells don't work. So if you get new working beta cells that your body doesn't attack, that could be a way to alleviate type 1. The much more common form of diabetes is type 2, and this is 90% of all cases of diabetes, and roughly 10% of adults may have this. And that's where you have normal or elevated insulin, but your cells don't recognize that insulin is being released. They are insulin resistant. And your glucose, the blood levels of your glucose will raise because of this, because the cells aren't uptaking glucose. And this high blood glucose will make your pancreatic beta cells release more insulin because they are continuing to see these high glucose levels, and so they're going to continuously release this insulin, and that can just lead to complications as this just cycles off on itself. So there could be many factors that causes type 2 diabetes. One, if you overeat, what might happen is that your body, the cells in your body will just stop making insulin receptors. You'll have a suppression of insulin receptors, and so your cells won't be able to tell if there's insulin around. Or what could happen is that you have more free fatty acids in your bloodstream, and this is decreasing the amount that insulin is interacting with your signals, and so your cells are getting a lower signal, and they can't tell that glucose is around. And there are drugs available to help with diabetes, so metformin and thioldineodyne, or TCD. So metformin, it suppresses the glucose that's released by your liver, so your liver's not going to release more glucose and make your blood glucose levels even higher. And TCDs will help your muscles uptake glucose and help to turn that into glycogen and use it to, again, get that glucose out of your bloodstream. And this can help promote AMPK levels as well. So let's look at cancer metabolism very briefly here. And cancer cells will use a lot of glucose, even if there's oxygen around. And what it's going to do is it's going to do a lot of anaerobic metabolism. And so they're doing what's called aerobic glycolysis, and that they're just doing glycolysis even though they have oxygen available. And they can use so much glucose that other parts of your body will starve because they aren't getting the energy that they need. Also, by just doing glycolysis, as we learned about, a lot of the intermediates of glycolysis can be used for other things, like the pentose phosphate pathway, make pyruvate to make proteins, acetyl-CoA can make fatty acids. So we are using our intermediates to build cell components instead of going to oxidative phosphorylation for energy. And this is because cancer cells are dividing. They need to make parts really fast. So they're getting energy from glycolysis, but also using those parts to make new cell components, which is allowing them to proliferate extremely fast. And one mutation that could happen that speeds this up even more is the overexpression of phosphofructokinase 2, fructose bisphosphate 2, and this will just cause flux to increase when you're overexpressing these enzymes. Now, it is possible that some of the glucose will go to the citric acid cycle, not a lot, and you're not doing it to make NADH to go to ATP. In this figure, you really want to focus on the green arrows for cancer metabolism. That's the route that cancer is going to do. But rather, you're going to take this citrate you make in the citric acid cycle and just send it to the cytoplasm and make fatty acids. Again, making new parts for making new cells. And it's also thought that we're making a lot of lactate with this, and that is thought to increase vasodilation, or the amount of blood flow that goes to these cancer cells, which in turn would mean they are getting even more nutrients, which is starving the other cells of your body. And they can also cause intermediates like 2-hydroxyglutarate, and this will allow their DNA not to be modified as much, which means any change in gene expression that made the cell cancerous will become permanent. It's not going to be switched off. So we're going to continue to use all this glucose to make all these intermediates, and there will be no stopping it because the stop mechanisms have been turned off. And alpha ketoglutarate from glutamine, because we can use those amino acids as well to make energy. We can also use those for anabolic pathways to start building new materials. So you can see how it's just kind of like a snowball effect. We're using this energy to build stuff. We're getting more blood flow. We can't turn off this process. your body's starving while these cancer cells are multiplying, which means your body's going to starve even more. So that's why it is such a vicious cycle with cancer. And that is it for this video. I will see you in the next one.